Well, George Negus was the original presenter of Foreign Correspondent, and he joins me now. George Negus, we just saw a little bit of you there, but it must bring back a lot of memories. But when you see all the upheaval that's going on in the Australian media landscape at the moment, what do you think?
Why am I not surprised you've asked me that question? I guess you've been around as long as I have, seeing the changes that I've seen. You could say, well, typewriters probably threw people when they were introduced to the newspapers. Cameras were a terrible upheaval for the media when they became used as a way of conveying news and information. Then computers, they were thrown on our desks without anybody telling us really how to work them. And now I think the digital age is the next. But there's no doubt whatsoever that the digital age in the media is far and away the most earth-shattering thing that's happened. And I think that where the current situation is concerned, it had to happen, but it didn't have to happen this way.
Certainly.
Of course, you've got this extra layer, of course, of people taking or trying to take control and ownership of outlets.
Well, you're referring there, of course, to Jenna Hart. She's got that almost 19% stake in Fairfax, and it's caused a huge kerfuffle because she's seeking some positions on the board. The ABC is reporting that the board wants her to sign the Charter of Editorial Independence. She won't do that. Do you think they should just let her on the board of Fairfax?
Oh, I don't know. It's a question of letting her. I mean, it happens all the day, and it is a commercial operation after all. It's not like the ABC where it's the taxpayers' money that's being sprayed all over the place. It is a commercial operation, and these things happen in commercial operations. But as I understand it, any commercial operation, any corporate affair, has to have its rules of governance. And I think board members are expected to abide by those, and whether they sign documents or not, they're expected to abide by them. And I think the same applies to newspapers. It certainly applies to the Sydney Morning Herald, and therefore it probably applies also to Jenna Hart. So I think all they're asking to do is play by the rules.
Well, Fairfax says that it's making all of these changes, and they do include 1,900 job losses because it has to adapt to a digital media world. When people can get information from around the world at their fingertips, particularly via social media, does it still leave a role for ABC programs like Foreign Correspondent, for example? Or
does it leave space or room for any programs whatsoever? I think what we tend to forget when we start talking about the digital revolution, we forget about content. And somebody has to provide that. And out there's a lot of content at the moment. There's a lot of information, as you point out. But how good is it? I mean, it's somewhere between genius and crap. I mean, when there's so much out there, there's going to be a lot of rubbish. And somebody's either got to sort the rubbish, or rewrite the rubbish, or keep writing their own rubbish that they've been doing for years. I think we can't forget that the content of even digital media doesn't create itself. Now, I suppose someday somebody will do that, and we won't have to do anything. We can just Google each other's brains. But I don't think we're quite at that stage yet. So I don't think we as journalists should panic. I feel very, 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 very strongly about what's happening at Fairfax at the moment, where people weren't apparently warned. But we all know that sort of thing's going to go on. It has already. I mean, this is a digitalised studio that we're working in right now. Now, 10 years ago, we wouldn't have believed that. And, 20 years ago, it was something altogether different again.
We talk about this new world of media, and it's no longer the new world, it's the world that we're faced with. Certainly social media, for example, has played a huge role in the Arab Spring uprisings in places like Libya and Syria, for example. So do you see some value of reporting using social media that ordinary reporters like you and I haven't been able to achieve in places, particularly like Syria?
Well, the Arab Spring's one that people always point to, don't they? But what's happened to the Arab Spring, it's still unsettled, so there's still a lot of work for the rest of us to do cleaning up. What the social media has done in those situations, and there's a lot of really, really negative things you could say about the social media, but that's a positive role for the social media, is that it enables people who wouldn't normally be interested in these things to communicate about it or have a voice, can find themselves on the old media via the new media. And I think at the moment we're at that sort of transition stage. The new media by itself wouldn't have the same impact. It's when the old media picks up what the new media is able to break, like the Arab Spring, and do something else with it. That's when something really begins to happen. But I think we're in a transition between the old and the new media.
And of course there's some places where the old and the new media are not making much headway, and I'm thinking of North Korea, for example, and that was one of your old stories.
Indeed.
In the mid-90s you went to North Korea. You described it as one of the most bizarre experiences that you've ever had.
Another planet, I think I described it.
Exactly. And recently we've seen a leadership change there. But from what you can observe of North Korea, have countries like that changed at all since you were last there?
The long answer, no. The short answer is also no. But no, I don't think it has. I mean, we're still arguing about what to do about North Korea. I can't even remember what year it was that I went there.
Mid-90s, 95, I think it was.
Almost 20 years. So, so I think that whatever's changed in the rest of the world hasn't had an impact on not just North Korea, but our ability to deal with a situation like that. I mean, you could also say that, when foreign correspondence started, half of the world lived on less than $2 a day. Pretty much what it does these days as well. So the media has an impact and the media doesn't have an impact on some things.
When you also think about other stories that you've covered, not only North Korea, I'm going to ask you, what else springs to mind? Some of those great experiences that you've had as a journalist reporting from some of these places.
Well, foreign correspondence started more or less at the time of the end of so-called communism in the Soviet Union, the Berlin Wall coming down now. And of course, in the 20 years since then, all sorts of things have happened, like September the 11th. I wonder whether in historical terms people will say that the Berlin Wall coming down was a more important event, which we were very much involved in the early years, days and years of foreign correspondent, or September the 11th, which is when George Bush told us life will never be the same again, which is a pretty stupid comment. It's never going to be the same again one day after the next. But what did we do? I think we just about everything that was happening at the time we covered one way or another. But climate change was something that hadn't been mentioned. Mm-hmm. The GFC hadn't happened. The digital age hadn't occurred. So what it tells me more than anything is that 20 years seems a long time ago, except that most of the things that have happened in the last 5 to 10 years. So it's almost like the first 10 years of foreign correspondent were the old media and the old world and the old world orders, and the last 10 years have been the new world. And I don't know how they're going keeping up with it, with new media or no new media, but just about everything that's happened of any significance in the last 20 years, I'd say, has appeared on foreign correspondent one way or the other.